So
there you go. That's all you needed.
That's all you needed right there. All right, Coach. Well, we appreciate you coming on the show. If you could, just let the listeners kind of hear a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, and we'll get right to it.
Yeah, so Jonathan Gambrell, teach AP and Honors Chemistry at Hillgrove. Been there the past 7 years. I was actually fortunate enough to student teach at Hillgrove, and then a student taught in the fall. So halfway through the semester, and Macen probably can vouch for this, it's hard to find a job teaching, graduating in December, but the lady decided that she was done. Her husband was in the military and he was up in North Carolina. So she was at the point where she was ready to make the move. And so the spot opened up. I was fortunate enough to get it. So I've been at Hillgrove. That's the only school I've been at. Started coaching cross country there, head cross country coach, and then helped with track, assistant track coach. And then just this past year took over as the head track coach. So I'm starting my 8th year at Hillgrove. It's been great, learned a lot. So yeah.
Now, did you have a background in cross country growing up? Did you run in high school?
Yeah, so I spent the first years of high school just kind of like I got into running like as a stress reliever, just kind of as something to kind of clear my head. And first years of high school, I had a couple friends trying to get me to come out and run. And like my biggest hang up was I'm not wearing the short shorts. Like I know what your guys' uniforms are. I'm not wearing the short shorts. So I'm not running cross country. So finally my junior year, they convinced me to come out, and I mean, I ended up running cross country and track my last years of high school. My only regret is not starting my freshman year. I was our number 1 runner my senior year, but that was also at Kennesaw Mountain. And I can say this because I went there, but like saying you're good from Kennesaw Mountain is not really like that great, because I mean, our football team went 6-6 every year. Yay. I mean, our cross country team qualified for state most years, except for the year I was a senior. So, I mean, I was our number 1 runner, but I wasn't that great. I ran 17:30 for a 5K, but it wasn't good enough. I mean, I probably could have gone to a small school somewhere, but I kind of went the education route. So I went to KSU after that, and then actually went over to Allatoona and helped my high school coach coach a couple years there. So that's kind of how I kind of got, I guess, in the coaching realm. I was going to go athletic. Well, high school, I thought I was going to go architecture, got into sports, really loved sports. So then when I was graduating from high school, I thought I'd go athletic training. Was at KSU my freshman year in the intro to the health and exercise science major, and the guy was like, raise your hand if you want to work for a pro or a college team. Of course, everybody raises their hand. He's like, all right, maybe 1 of you or 2 of you are actually going to get there because the people love those jobs. They're hard to get. The rest of you are going to work with elderly or overweight people with knee, hip, that kind of, physical therapy type of stuff. And I kind of knew in the back of my mind, I wanted to coach, and I was kind of resistant to the teaching side of it. I was just like, I never saw myself as a teacher. And my dad kept saying, well, if you want a head coach in high school, you have to be a teacher. So, and then once I made the move, I don't regret it. I'm glad I made that decision. But so ran in high school. I mean, I ran while I was in college, but I didn't run on a college team. I just kind of helped my high school coach.
Now go ahead.
No, it's just, what years were you at Kennesaw Mountain?
I graduated 2009.
Okay. Yeah, my sister went there and graduated in 2005.
Okay. So a little bit before.
I'm well equipped about Kennesaw Mountain. Trust me, that's the land of underperforming athletic programs.
we went ahead and snatched Dansby out of there.
Yeah,
it's tough. It would have been weird if we all would have went there.
I don't know why. I mean, the only thing that was good there when I was there was the band. Like the marching band was really good. And I remember one year the marching band parents threatened to take the student section away from the students. So then the students showed up like 4 hours before the game so that the marching band parents couldn't get there. But like that was about the most exciting sports.
Electric.
Really.
Yeah, all 15 showed up.
Yeah,
No disrespect to Kennesaw Mountain. But all right, well, you said something interesting to me. So you started running your junior year. Now, would you say that it's better for cross-country kids to start at a younger age? I know there's a lot of debate on whether or not kids for different sports should start at certain ages or what age they should start at. Would you say, as far as a burnout, as far as a development, what is kind of the best age in your opinion? Because I've seen some people at like Mud Creek, some kids who clearly are training for cross country. They got to be maybe 11, 12?
Yep. It depends. I've seen, and even in our program, we've had experience with kids who started running cross country in 6th grade. Like our number 1 girl, Grace Ellsworth, has a school record. She's at UGA now. She started training seriously in 5th grade. And then she ends up being top, I want to say she was 3rd. The year our girls won state, she was 3rd in the state that year, went on to UGA. I've also seen kids start training in 6th grade, and by the time they get to high school, they're so burnt out on it that they're done. I mean, a lot of it depends on, I think, who's training them in their middle school years. Cause I mean, you got to look at, that's a long time for a young kid to kind of focus and dedicate themselves. We're fortunate. We have a middle school coach who does a really good job of giving them enough training to where they see success and they buy into it and they enjoy it, but not so much training to where by the time they get to me, they're burnt out and they're sick of it. So it really, from a purely a training developmental standpoint, the sooner they can start, the better. And you look at we look at Kenyans and the Ethiopians, the East Africans, and why are they good at distance running? Well, look at the environment they're living in. They're at altitude, but look at their day-to-day lives. They're not getting in a car driving to school. They're running 10 kilometers to get to school. Most people in the running world will know the name Edward Cheserek, but he went to the University of Oregon, was however many time national championship, running professionally now. But he tells the story where to come over from Kenya to get into an American school, he ran, there were bad floods. And so his dad was going to drive him to take the test, but there were bad floods and the cars couldn't get on the road. He ran, I want to say it was 20 or 25 miles to go take the test. He got there right before they started the test, took the test, and then ran home. But when you look at those, you can get into their lifestyle. You can get into their running for a lot more than just when these Kenyans go and win a marathon, it changes not just their life, but it changes the life of their village. They then take that money and they go back and build a school, they build a hospital, it changes more than just their life. So that's a whole different motivator. But the kids at a young age, they're already running, they're outside. And I think listening to previous, episodes of the podcast, I think you guys probably spent your childhood like me. I was outside all the time. We were playing pickup basketball. We were playing football. We were playing all that stuff outside. Whereas now I feel like kids are going home, playing video games. They're inside. They're not going outside. And so when you look from an athletic development standpoint, what are you doing during these years? Well, if we got kids who are training for cross country, that's going to be beneficial. But then if you burn them out and they don't care about it, they're not motivated by the time they get to high school, then it doesn't even matter at that point.
How much is, as I know, when you're looking at not just the collegiate level, but when you're looking at the high school level, is cross country growing as a sport? We've had different people on here. We've talked soccer, we've talked women's sports, we've talked different stuff. Is cross country growing as a sport from not just a high school level, but to a college level too? I think that, I could be mistaken. I know there was some noise with the BYU girls. Didn't they just send 2 teams and they won 2 different titles, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
With
COVID, with fall sports, a lot of fall sports being canceled, cross country was one of the championships that got moved. So they ended up having indoor nationals, NCAA indoor nationals this weekend, and then cross country nationals yesterday. You had people run both, but BYU, yeah, they're women. So they the DMR distance medley relay at indoor nationals. They won the one or two other events, but then they sent 7 different women to run the cross country national championships, and they just won nationals yesterday, which back last year, their women finished second. They almost won last year as well. I mean, when you look at cross country, you know, I guess cross country and track and field as a sport, like overall, I would say it's growing. Like when the National Federation puts out their participation numbers, like they're definitely going up. But when you look at the collegiate level, like you can find colleges that are cutting. Like cross country and track is one of the first sports to get cut. It's one of the easiest sports to cut. I mean, Clemson, there's a group trying to save the Clemson men's team because their AD came out and they're getting rid of their men's track and field program after this season. They say COVID-related issues. There's a group on Twitter that's trying to fight against it. There's actually 2 class action lawsuits about to be filed against Clemson for Title IX discrimination. So it's growing, but at the same time, like it's those that are in the know in the like track and field cross country world know that like our sport's on the chopping block because like we're a non-revenue sport. We don't bring in money and I mean, you look at college sports, football, like they run the show because they bring in the money. So cutting a non-revenue sport to save however many hundreds of thousands of dollars, there's been a lot of talk amongst the track and cross country coaches at the collegiate level. How can we change the sport so that it gives more like a win and a loss kind of thing to give more value or more relatability to the common person? Because most people, when they look at, oh, so-and-so just ran 13:30 for a 5K, your average fan of the college, that's not going to get them excited. Whereas if you say, hey, we went and raced them in a dual meet and we beat this school or this school, that may get people more bought in. So I would say at the high school level, it's definitely growing. And at the collegiate level, it is as well. But there's also a number of programs around the country that have been cut in the past few years and that are being cut this year or in danger of being cut in the next few years. And if a school like Clemson can cut their men's track team, it can happen anywhere. I mean, Clemson's budget, they got the money.
It's not like it's a Mississippi Valley State that we're talking about, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, you see baseball is the same thing. Like for a lot of programs, they're not necessarily generating money, and it's an easy way to cut funding if you get rid of a baseball team. I mean, there's 35 guys, right? And you can nix that whole thing and move on to something else and focus on what's going to bring in the money. And we talk about that all the time. Just follow the money, and I'll tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. I feel like the thing with track and field too is, like you said, it's exciting when you can legitimately watch it and you can, like, it's pretty simple. You get to that finish line before someone else does, and voila, right? But sometimes, like you said, when you just see the numbers pop up on the screen, you say, well, I have no idea what that means. Like, I don't know if that's good. I don't know if that's bad. You know, I have no idea. So that's an interesting way to kind of generate kind of evolve with the times a little bit and create a little bit more like clash, competition.
Well,
I mean,
especially
every school kind of has their rival, right? Like they have the school, and so you go compete against them, you race them head to head. And I always explain like NASCAR and track and like racing on the track, kind of similar in a sense, like you're just going in an oval, but like I don't understand the ins and outs of NASCAR. For people who understand the ins and outs, it's appealing to them. Me, like when I watch, I mean, the 10,000 meter on the track, like one of my favorite races to watch is the 10,000 meter Olympic final from the London Olympics. I mean, I can tell you exactly where I was. I know who I was with. I mean, an American finally medaled in the 10K, but that's 25 laps on the track. Who's going to sit and watch 25 laps on the track? Unless you're like into it, like understanding the ins and outs of it. Like it's not as appealing to, you know, your average casual viewer as say a football, basketball, or even baseball may be to a more casual person who may not know all the ins and outs, but a football game is going to be more entertaining to the casual viewer than watching people run 25 laps on the track.
Right. And I'll say this, though, for the listeners that don't know, Coach Gambrell is responsible for bringing the first ever state title to Hillgrove High School. I like to say that to people. Marietta, actually, these are two Marietta people. I don't know if you know Mitchell went to Marietta, but obviously Dansby did too. And
I did. I was going to ask. I knew Dansby did, and I knew Macen, you did it. I wasn't sure where Mitchell.
I was there. They're just waiting to retire my number, like Dansby.
The key to the city is coming once Dansby's done with the key, but it is on its way. Then it's going to come to you. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is, I think, Coach, you do a great job of getting kids excited for cross country at Hillgrove, just from kind of what I've seen. And I mean, your numbers obviously speak for themselves. If you look at, if you're driving on Castile Road at any time past 4, you're likely to see a group of them getting the work in. But the main reason we brought you on, or I wanted to bring you on, was you do a fantastic job of getting people to buy in. And I think a part of that is your branding, and kind of you did a great job, or are doing a great job of setting up your cross-country program to have key values and to look and to respect certain things, such as, consistency or effort or energy or whatever you may be. And you do a great job of hashtagging them and using all that on your social media. Can you kind of dive into your thought process behind that, and why you think, mainly today we want to talk about consistency, but why you think that branding it and using those words are good, and how have you gotten the kids to really buy into those things?
Yeah. How do I get them to buy into it? I say it all the time. I put it on every shirt. I put it on every post. Any kid in our program, like even your kid who's the least bought in, the least paying attention, they know our team hashtag is consistent to great. So it gets to the point sometimes where like they kind of laugh about it, but then we do senior scholarships at our banquet at the end of the season, and so we make them write an essay and answer some questions, and being able to read what the seniors are writing, like they may laugh at consistent to great or our other one, collective momentum, but they understand what it means. And, for me, I guess, like from a coaching standpoint, like we're always trying to find like a cliche or something that's like quick, but it communicates like our message and what we're trying to do. I can't really tell you specifically. I guess, I could scroll back on our social media page and see when I started using consistent to great. It came from I watched enough interviews of professional collegiate athletes. I read enough books. I'm always trying to read whatever right now I'm reading stuff for grad school, which is not near as fun as, personal reading, but I'm always trying to read stuff to become a better coach. And everything that I was reading and listening to good coaches from interviews, listening to good athletes, just the idea of being consistent in training, that just kind of stuck with me. So I was like, okay, and as I stepped into the Hillgrove program, my very first year coaching, we were our boys were dead last in the region, and our girls were second to last. We didn't even qualify for state. And so I'm sitting here trying to think, okay, and Macen, you've been at Hillgrove, we have athletes at Hillgrove, no one can deny that. So I walk into Hillgrove and I'm thinking, okay, well, first of all, why has there been no state title won at Hillgrove? You're telling me with the athletes who've come through here, the teams they've had, why has nobody won a state title? And then I'm looking, okay, I know we have the athletes here. So then I'm like, how do I convince them to come out to cross country? But it's not just about getting the athletes to come out, you got to put in the work. Mm-hmm. So, and I think consistent to great for us has just been I wanted to find something, you see other sports teams, they have their hashtag, you see all your different teams. And I think I've told Macen this, I just look at college and pro teams and I copy what I see some of them doing. And I just look at, seeing a lot of them having their hashtags or team slogans, like the BYU girls. that just won nationals. Their hashtag is hashtag BYU Run for Her. It's too long for me, but like it communicates like what their program is about. Like just from their hashtag, you can get an idea of what they probably talk about a lot for their team culture and that kind of thing. So consistent to great was just how can I take the value that I see that these kids don't have. One thing that the cross country team was lacking when I took over was they weren't consistently training. The coach before me, great guy, but didn't really hold them accountable in terms of being at practice, that kind of thing. So I walked into a program where kids weren't used to training consistently day in and day out. If the weather was bad, no practice. If it's a break, spring break, whatever break, no practice, no workouts. So I'm like, the one thing this program needs is we just need to train consistently. And so that's kind of where consistent to great came from. And then, you know, I have coaches ask me like, well, how did you like get them to buy in, or how did you build the culture? And like, I just slap them in the face with the hashtag whenever I can. Like, I mean, like we were talking before, I had to sit them down and just kind of talk to them about like holding each other accountable. And, you know, what is Hillgrove cross country and track? What are we about? Like, what are we trying to do? What does it mean to run for Hillgrove? And what our hashtag came up, like consistent to great came up in the talk, just because that's kind of something that kind of guides what we do. So, you know, you're more of a brander. I guess I'm not a brander, but I just try to, you know, look at the values I'm trying to instill and the values that I think that will help them. And then from there, find fun and cool. Cause like these kids, you got to make it cool. Like you can't just get up and you can't just talk about being consistent. Like I think in one of my grad school classes I'm doing right now, it's just talking about how these kids are so stimulated by, and one of the classes I'm taking is images, like how do you use pictures and visuals in learning, but like talking about how these kids, and you guys touched on a lot of it in your kind of your social media episode, but it's like they're getting images and they're getting bombarded from their phone when they wake up in the morning. So like in the classroom or like at practice, if I'm not giving them cool stuff, if I'm not engaging them, they're going to go somewhere else and get that engagement. So like my thought, how can I engage them? Like, how can I draw them in? How can I make, as hard as it can be sometimes, how do I make running cross country look cool? I mean, how do I convince you that going out on a Saturday, waking up to get on a bus at 5 a.m. to then go run 3.1 miles as fast as you possibly can? Like, how do I make that look cool and sound fun? Again, to convince some of those athletes in the school that, hey, this is something I might want to try out. Have a cool hashtag, take your hashtag, put it on a cool graphic, put on a graphic where people look like they're having fun, maybe send them the subliminal messages or that kind of thing. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that one part of consistency that we need to touch on is we talked about this before the show, is there's kind of three underlying principles, and we'll take some time to go through them. And the first one is patience. And I actually want to talk to Dansby about this because I think part of being consistent is and we talk about this all the time, you have to be willing to accept a little bit of failure or maybe a little bit of stagnant movement. And part of that is patience, right? And so when you're trying to work at something, you may not see, like we always talk about getting 1% better. Well, maybe some days you don't, and that's okay. But I think, Dansby, you have this on like the largest scale possible, meaning people literally, like when you came to my work and watched me teach, like thousands of people do that to you every single day. And so how do you try to be patient with your consistency, with your process, when not only things are good, but when you're trying to, maybe tweak something or get in a groove?
Yeah, well, I mean, even before we get into that, I think we should just make it clear, and I'm going to ask Coach this, like, what is consistency? It's so, like, we take these things for granted so many times because we assume that everyone knows what toughness is or what consistency is. But at the end of the day, how are you personally defining consistency? Because that's ultimately what's going to lead you to your consistency. Because if my consistency is not eating right, not taking care of myself, whatever, and I think my consistency is just showing up every day, that's not really the full story, right? Like there's so much more to it. What is consistency? How, we're going to break it down with these 3 different parts, but the overall definition, like how would someone define that? Because I think that to me, that's the important like building block to even start with something, whether it's building team culture or instilling values or saying I'm going to embody something. Well, what does consistency actually look like, to start with?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because I know I've told my kids, hey, you're consistent at being inconsistent. But I'm like, hey, at least you're consistent at something, like, right? Like, that's good. And, we kind of talk about the idea of, I don't really want you to show up to practice and have a monster workout. Whereas, so for us, consistency is, and we do talk, okay, consistency in running. Obviously, you have to train. I mean, even today, I'm talking to them. I'm like, guys, we spend 2 hours at practice, but then you spend 22 hours not at practice. What do you think's more important, like the 2 hours you spend at practice or the 22 hours that you're not at practice? Then are you sleeping enough at night? Are you fueling properly? Like, into going through that. So when we talk consistency, it's consistency in, so in running, are you getting your runs in every day? Are you Mondays for us is long run day. Wednesdays is a key workout. Fridays, if we don't have a race on Saturday, is a key workout. So are you skipping days? Like when we don't have practice, are you running or are you not? So, but looking at it from the standpoint of, we're not asking you to go above and beyond, but like if I got a 45-minute run on the schedule for you, are you getting that run in? So are you showing up day in and day out? And I have to tell the kids, because like sometimes training can be boring, and we're running. That kids say, hey coach, what are we doing at practice today? We're running, which is the same thing we did yesterday. And it's the same thing we're going to do tomorrow. And every time you ask me what we're doing, we're always going to be running. Like, I'm sorry you chose a sport where that's what we're doing. And so, I tell them the hardest part of our sport is the consistency piece, showing up every day, getting your runs in, but then also, okay, are you consistently getting 8+ hours of sleep at night? Are you consistently fueling your body properly? Are you eating what you need to eat? Are you consistently hydrating? Are you consistently, even getting into the mental side of it? Are you consistently negative? Are you consistently being positive? So, for us, consistency is the idea that, and I have kids all the time, your younger kids, oh, coach, I had a great workout today. I'm like, awesome. But guess what? It's not about one good day. And something like most of the kids, they'll hear me say it, they'll get tired of it, but I'm like, our sport is about taking one good day, turning it in, honestly, and not even a good day. We don't even have to have a good day, but one day that we did what we were supposed to, that turns into a week, that turns into a month, that turns into a year, that turns into 4 years. And that when you look back at the end of your high school career, you didn't have 25 amazing days where you had a great workout. You had 4 years worth of average days that when you look back on your high school career, you ended up being third in the state, or you ended up being, whatever state champ, that kind of thing. So I think it's a good point to define consistency, because you can be consistently going in the wrong direction as well. I think the thing that we preach, though, and I try to get my kids to understand, is that you don't have to be a rock star every day at practice, and you're not going to be a rock star. But it's also the idea that, hey, guess what? You're going to wake up one day and you're not going to want to get your run in. It's going to be raining outside. It's going to be cold. Your legs are a little more sore from the workout yesterday than you thought they would be, and it's just easier for you not to run. But that consistency is, get out and get your run in. You may not cover your 5 miles as fast as you did last week on a recovery day, but guess what? Get it in. Just get it in, be consistent. On those bad days, put the work in, check the box off, be happy that you're healthy, and we'll move on and we'll have better days. So I think that's kind of for us how we define consistency.
What's funny is we have a saying in baseball that Anybody can do it once. Like anybody can have a good day. Like that's just the law of averages. But what is your threshold for that? Is your law of averages below average? Is your law of averages above average? Because like I said, anybody can run into a homer. Anybody can run into making a good play. Can you do it again? Because that is where, the success truly lies. And so my dad wrote me this letter, and he sent me a picture of it. And this is exactly what we're talking about. I'm going to just read this part of it. He says, the start of the season is exciting. The end of the season is exciting. But the season is made in the mundane. The third Tuesday in July is mundane, but just as important as the first game of the season or the first game of the playoffs. Greatness is made in the mundane. Mastering the mundane, the ability to focus on the routine plays, the ability to compete when you don't feel right in the box is what makes the career. Leaders aren't built fast. You have been through the fire, you have been in the ditch and crawled out. You have proved that you're going to show up when things are hard, and that is what leaders do. And that literally goes to exactly what we're talking about, because consistency isn't on your best day. Consistency also isn't defined by your worst day. Consistency is defined by what happens on all the other days. And it's so easy for us to forget that, because at the same time too, the consistent part isn't necessarily the results. The consistent part is the work that you're putting into to get the results. And we often get really caught sideways with that, because yes, if you prepare consistently, that is going to lead to good results. However, there's no such thing as like a one little fix and like everything's okay, right? I may make a tweak with my swing or approach or whatever, and I have a good day. But it's not just a fix all be all. There's not a magic pill, right? If there's a treatment plan for an injury, you don't just take something and it goes away. You see all the time, like, for best results, do this consistently for a couple of weeks.
You could take it and it goes away, but then you get popped in a drug test.
Right. Right. But you know what I mean? The best stuff works because you do it over time, and it is accumulated over time, because we're trying to stack wins, right? Like you said, we're trying to stack good days together. If you stack good days together and all of a sudden that leads to a good week, all of a sudden leads to a good month, that's where you want to be. You don't want to just have a good day, which is why I said anybody can do it once.
Right.
But I guess going back to Macen asking about, we're starting with patience, and that's kind of leads right into it, right? Like, you have to have some conviction and belief in this plan that you have put forth, right? It's like I said, the first day is exciting. People buy into the plan. Well, do you buy into that plan every day? Because if you're doing it every day, that's going to lead to you performing your best in whatever it is that you're doing, sports, school, you name it. But with that comes, like you said, the patience, because I may be okay that first day. Okay. The next day I might not get exactly what I want, but I know that my prep work is going to lead me, to whatever is going to happen in the game. I was actually talking to a guy on the team about it today. I said, dude, your swing is awesome. Your BP is great. Your cage work, I've watched you for the last week or two, has been great. Now you just got to go perform. Throw all that out the window. Now just go play and trust the work that you've been putting in is going to lead to that success down the road, because I don't want to sell my soul to have a great 100 at-bats. I want to put myself in position to succeed over 500 at-bats. I mean, I play 162 games a year. I have to do what is good for me to be successful over the long haul, not for, I'm going to do what I can to be good tonight. You're going to do what you need to do. However, if I'm doing what's right and what works for me over the course of a full season, I'm going to be really good, right? That's the thought process, and that's where the patience comes in. But with that patience, you have to be really, really wise in understanding what it is that you're trying to accomplish, because consistency, a vision with no direction is just a dream, right? But when you have a vision and a goal to get there, that's actually like planning. You know what I mean? Like, that can actually become reality. And so many times, like I said, we see like, yeah, I want to be this. But to get to that, do you realize all the stuff in between that has to happen consistently to get to that top tier point? It's a lot. It is a lot. You know, it truly is. And that's where, like I said, I didn't become Messi. He always says, like, I didn't become an overnight success. It took 17 years to become an overnight success, you know? but that's not sexy anymore in culture. That's not sexy. Because, you know, you want to show people you're doing this, you're doing that.
Now,
but I'll tell you, what is sexy is when you're 50 and you're balling and everybody else is still working, you know, away. And it's like, well, I just did all that work that you're doing now. I did that the last 20 years and I'm sitting in this spot. Whereas, you know, you're kind of wondering what's going on when you're 50 and I'm chilling retired or whatever it may be. Right. It's much cooler to work consistently over time and get to a certain point as opposed to continuously searching for that point and never really getting there.
Yeah.
Well, I think like when you look at like patience, I have this conversation with kids all the time, but like, so adding a little bit of layer to what Dansby was saying, like, what if you put in the work consistently, and what if you don't get the results that you think you deserve, right? You deserve to get, because these kids, Macen, you probably deal with all the time. These kids think that for whatever reason, if I put in the work, I deserve an A in the class. If I put in the work, and so it's like, and I tell my kids all the time, well, you're not guaranteed the results just because you put in the work. And like, how do you know that you're guaranteed the results now or in 6 months or in 1 year? And one thing, it may even be on our Twitter bio for the team, but it's this is on the Twitter bio, so there we have a different quote, but I always tell the kids, everybody wants to be great, but not everybody's willing to put in the work that it takes to be great. Everybody wants to win a state title. Go ask anybody, or national championship, World Series, whatever you want to win. If you're in athletics and coaching, you want to reach that level. If you don't, then you need to get out. But like, everybody wants to reach that level, but not everybody wants to put in the work it takes. And like we were talking before, what is the work that it takes? Well, sometimes it means on the Friday before a break. So like spring break, that Friday before, you know, school's out, who's on the track? Probably the cross country or the track team. Is there anybody else out there? Maybe, but most of the times not. And I say all the time, like, there's no secret. And, you know, it took us 7 years to win a state title. What if I gave up after 4? You know what I mean? So like, what if I didn't get where I wanted to get after 4 years? And so, and I think, Macen, going back to the branding, me as the coach, I've got to believe it and live it first. If I'm not doing that, then how can I expect the kids to buy into it? But if I'm doing that, then they're going to buy in. But I think the patience goes to, hey, kids, you're not, just because you put in the work, your friend may be getting faster. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for kids, right? They play that comparison game. Well, you know, my best friend, they just PR'd by 30 seconds, but I only PR'd by 10 seconds. But man, I put in more work than them, coach. What's going on? I'm like, you're not guaranteed. And I tell them, like, if you put in the work consistently over time, your time will come. But the problem is, a lot of people will give up. And I think this goes not just in sports, but take your career, take school, whatever it might be. A lot of people give up before they reach that end point. You know, I guess being a podcast, you can't, visuals don't work well, but I have a picture and I'll carry it around in my backpack, but it's of a guy who's digging for a diamond.
Yes.
I was just going to say
right
this.
There. He's right there.
Going to say this. And he turns around.
Right there, right?
Yeah.
He turns around. I'm like, how do you not know if you were 3 days away from that breakthrough you're wanting and you just gave up and now you're never going to get there? So I think patience goes to the, hey, stay consistent even when the results aren't going your way, or even, again, but we live in this mindset of I deserve this in 6 months if I put in the work.
Right. And I got a couple things here. And so I got something, a stat. Once again, Macen's back with the numbers.
Macen and his numbers, yeah.
Because that's what I do, and I bring the people what they want, and the people want numbers. So I got a study here, a little drum roll, a little suspense. 92% of people who set New Year's Eve goals, whatever they are, do not achieve them. All right. 8% that set those goals actually achieve them, which we've already gone into goal setting, obtainable, specific, that kind of thing. But it's interesting because it's exactly what you talk about when you're talking about, well, my friend PR'd by 30 seconds and I only PR'd by 10. You still PR'd by 10.
I was gonna say you still PR. Like,
what the hell are you complaining about? Like you just beat your personal record by 10 seconds. You accomplished your goal. Like you're getting better. Like, no, I'm not gonna, I'm working out or whatever. I'm not gonna step on the scale and drop 12 pounds in a day, or else I'd probably die. That's not gonna happen. But if you keep chipping, and you see people all the time, like you will get to that goal. It's the same thing with lifting weights. It's the same thing of running. It's the same thing of doing whatever you're doing. You have got to consistently chip to when you get there. And then the problem is you compare your success to other people's success.
There's always going to be someone bigger, faster, stronger.
Yeah, that's just the way of the world. But you start going, well, Sarah got a 30-second or 40-second PR, but I know I'm faster than her, and I know I'm working harder. Well, it could be something, like especially in cross country or sports, whatever. It could be something as, for some reason, Sarah slept better than you did last night. She had more hydration. She's just feeling it, right? She's just feeling it that day or that evening. And I think that comes back to, and I want to hit on this. Number one, Dansby, your dad's letter is fantastic. He also sent that.
Yeah, that was solid.
He said to me and Mitchell about our bowling extravaganza as we chased 300. But I think it comes down. No, it did get me fired up. But I think it comes down to the fact that, I mean, Shakespeare, but Shakespeare / Cooter. So I think that it comes down to the part that I said fart, but the part that you got to trust the process. And so it's one of those things where, like, trust the process is corny. Joel Embiid said that. Like, it's corny. It was like, oh, trust the process, haha. And it's like, okay, but if you consistently work and you know for a fact, it's like trusting your trainer. Like, your trainer has specifically designed this thing for you. Like, based on your body type, based on your height and weight, based on your genetics, based on everything, this is what you need to do. Well, if you quit, if you have a 6-month program and you quit week 3, like, I'm not getting the results I want. Well, yeah, you're not trusting the process. You're not really committed. And so that's kind of and I guess you got to stay accountable and all these other things kind of play into it. But how much of it is the mental aspect of it too, of like the belief system?
Yeah.
So you – go ahead.
No, I was just going to like kind of quick tidbit. So you know how we're Mal and I are getting that like home gym, like weight room put in the house, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
can't wait for that.
Me and Mitch gonna be there 6:30.
Yeah, it was very.
Can't wait for that.
Hot tub, cold tub.
It was designed with a purpose, right? Obviously, for training purposes, but like there's a reason why things are there, right? Like it's more than just the weight room for us to work out in. Like, it's designed specifically for me to become absolutely the best athlete that I can be, and same for her. But so Sorenex, the weight room stuff, they're doing the whole thing. They helped me design it. And you can basically put up these like headings, and I'm not really big into like the whole like necessarily corny sayings, but I'm very intentional about the stuff that I do and how I do it. And we have 3 headers basically. They're like going to be etched and everything and look real good. The first one says "Be convicted." That's kind of like my always go-to saying. Like, if I'm convicted and believe in what I'm doing, I'm going to fare off a lot better than if I'm doing something I don't believe in, which is all about creating culture too, right? The second one is, how you said trust the process is corny. And that's why we chose stay the course, because it's the same thing. And for me, stay the course embodies a lot of when things are going good, but also when things are going bad. Like, stay on that same course, stay true to that course. And the last one is uphold excellence, because at the end of the day, if I'm doing those 3 things, I'm going to be in line with what it is that I expect for myself, right? Like, I feel like I do like a reflection of myself every year and what it is that I need to get better at, And, 1 year, as silly as it sounds, I was like, if I expect excellence out of myself in everything that I do, on field, off field, like you name it, I need to consistently dress better, and I've been working with a guy named Brandon now for the last year or so, just because that's a part of me and what needs to be at the standard that I hold myself to, right? Like, like RIP Mamba, but like you never saw Kobe Bryant like slipping. Like he always looked really good and really professional. Derek Jeter always looks good and professional. It's like if I'm expecting myself to get to that same level, I have to do the same and hold myself accountable for that same stuff. And so I thought I'd share that. And then the other thing, I guess, other personal story is just like my life in general, right? Like I was not heavily recruited, nice Georgia Tech little sweatshirt you got there. They told me I wasn't good enough to play there, even, I went to Vandy and people were like, oh, like, well, how'd you get there? I'm like, because they just saw something and believed in something that I was doing that they felt would lead me to success. When I got to Vandy, I mean, we had, I think maybe 11 recruits in our recruiting class. 2 of them signed out of high school. Then the other 9 were there. And I was probably number, as far as everybody else sees, I was probably number 7 out of 9, right? Like very much almost like an afterthought. But once again, I stayed true to myself and to my work. I stayed true to it all the way from when I was a kid all the way through college, and it led me to where I've gotten to now. And it's just a testament, like you're saying, to you realize you're this close to, the gold mine or whatever, and you turn around. No, it's about consistently putting in that work, but also, consistent can go for a bunch of other things. Am I consistently reflecting on myself to see what it is that I can improve on that will then make me more consistent, right? Like there's different tiers to the whole thing, because you think LeBron James is consistent with what he was his rookie year. Yeah, maybe his numbers, but how he's gotten to that point has been different. He has evolved his consistency into something bigger and better. Look at Tom Brady, like the greatest of all time at what they do. No, I'm not trying to get an MJ LeBron debate. I'm just saying this whole category of the GOAT that we all kind of label everyone in, right? They evolved over time. Like Tom Brady is a different quarterback now than what he did, 15 years ago in New England. It's a completely different thing. So, I mean,
even 5 years ago.
Yeah. So it's all about the willingness and savviness and the wisdom to look at yourself and say, hey, Dansby, last year was, your best year you probably had in pro baseball. Okay, well, I'm not trying to do that same thing. I'm trying to do that same thing better this time. I'm trying to have my upticks more consistent than what I did last year. Like, I don't want to have the week and a half lull of not knowing how to hit a baseball again. Like it's about being consistently better. Yeah, I had the same conversation with Dad driving back from our game today. I was like, the best players in the league. Like, yes, there's, Ronald Acuna Jr., Mike Trout, you go down the list, right? Like Juan Soto, pretty blessed, like physically more than the average Major League Baseball player. However, what makes them so good is that they are good far more often than they're bad. They are consistently good, because if this game is a law of averages, like we were just saying, their averages are a lot higher than, the average player.
The vast majority, yeah.
Correct. So it's like, how do you reach that point and that peak of, if this was me last year, people can't see this, but if I was a 5 last year, how can I be a 6.5 or 7 consistently this year? And then once you get to that level, you can then build up to say, okay, how can I get to an 8 at all times this year? And like I said, kids, I feel like I'm glad you brought this up, Coach, about, just because you put in the work doesn't mean you're going to get the results. Because we're told if you work hard enough, you can have – that's not true. That's not true. That's not how life works. That's not how the world works. So we're going to go ahead and cross that myth out now. However, you can't even remotely get to the results until you work. That's the first step. However, let's say you work and you don't get the results. What do? You reflect and you say, okay, how can I work differently to now get to the results that I want to get to? Do I need to eat better? Do I need to be sleeping better? Do I need to just drink more water? And even now, like, it gets as little as like, am I drinking the right water? I'm big into that stuff. It's like, okay, I'm eating good, but am I actually eating good for me? Like, all the time I'm sitting here thinking, well, almond butter is better than, peanut butter for you, this and that. It's like, well, maybe not for you personally, like, oh, cauliflower is healthy, but hey, my body actually doesn't, process cauliflower as good as it does this other vegetable. So maybe I need to incorporate that more. Whatever. There's so many fine-tuned things that go into it. And I think that's the adjustment process that has to take place every year too, when you want to consistently get better. And I feel like that helps keep kids and programs engaged more, because yes, you're consistent at doing the same stuff all the time, but there's also tweaks here and there of what you believe is going to allow, give kids the luxury of being even better than what they were before.
Right. And I think, I think that you're hitting on all the last point here from me of consistency, which is value. You value what you're trying to do, right? So you value trying to be the best version of yourself and holding yourself to that excellent standard. So because you value it, you're going to dress right. Because you value trying to be the best player possible, you're going to try to find little increments, or you're going to try to find little tweaks in your diet to help you. And everybody's looking for that, next thing, which is so interesting. Like, I always, we'll sit around for football coaches and we'll talk, and it's like, we'll go throughout the school day and we'll be like, okay, well, imagine if the whole day we just talked football. Like, that's it. Like, imagine I didn't have to teach 3 class periods and I could just think about football, and I could sit there and go, I literally know what that outside linebacker is going to do when I get in trips. I know his first step. I know where his eyes are going to be. I know everything. Like, how much better would you be? Well, a lot, because you're putting value into your stock, and you're putting stock into your actual product, which is what you're doing. But the other thing I think is big here when dealing with athletes, not necessarily, well, maybe I can't really speak on, I don't know. I know maybe 6 or 7 professional athletes, but the fear of failing, I think, for high school kids is a big thing, where they fear, and I know that fear is made up or whatever, but they legitimately are scared that they're not going to do well. So, like, you'll talk to, like, kids at a track meet. Coach, you probably deal with this. I know you deal with this all the time, where they get on the line and you're like, you feeling good? Oh, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I just, I'm running with people from, whether it's a 4x1 and you got to run against somebody that 2/3 of their leg is faster than you or faster than yours. Well, there's so many things that if you get up on the block and you're already thinking, no shot, I'm slower than they are. Well, you don't have a shot. Like, your belief in you're gone. And so how do you deal with kids on the fear of, I don't know if they even, I guess they have to have it in cross country or track or whatever, of,
Yeah.
I just don't know if I can compete with this person.
Yeah, I mean, deal with it on the track, deal with it in the classroom, but like, at what point in society, or what point in raising kids or whatever, at what point have we taught them that failure is a bad thing? And, we look in school, failing a test is bad. And I teach AP Chem. So got the nerds, got the smart kids, but guess what? I also deal with the smart kids who AP Chem has been the first class that challenges them, and it's the first class that they fail a test. My kid in running, I mean, I'm preaching all the time. Like, I feel like as a coach, like, I'm trying to undo a lot of these bad habits and things that they have been taught in their upbringing, in order to get them to the point where they can compete at the highest level for them possible. And, I think it's a different podcast for a different day on what does it take to compete at a high level. But if you're competing, like, if you're afraid, like, you're not going to compete as well as you could. But why are you afraid? Are you afraid because you didn't consistently put in the work you were supposed to? right? So then I'm always talking to them. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, and in cross country or track, the kids are always, at least in distance running, they're afraid they're going to die at the end of a race. They're afraid they're not going to be able to finish the race, right? And so like, I'm talking all the time, especially with the younger kids on, hey, you know, we call it the JV kick. And Macen, you can probably, you've seen this at track meets, but you see the kid who in the 1600, 4 laps on the track, they jog 3 laps, 3.5 laps, and then out of nowhere on the last lap, they're the fastest kid on the track. And it's like, well, they sandbagged or they were afraid they were going to die. But I tell them, look, this is how we get better. You got to push your limits. If you never push your limits to failure, you never know where that threshold is. I mean, even this past weekend, we have some decent sophomore boys that I'm trying to teach how to race and how to, you know, push themselves. And the problem is they're always holding back, afraid that they're not going to finish the race. And I'm like, guys, I make my kids log their miles every week. I check them every Sunday. If they don't log them, they don't race. So, you know, holding them accountable to log the miles. But part of it is like, go back and look at your log. Go back and look at all summer. Go back and look at the season. Like that should build your confidence. So you shouldn't be afraid. But it's like, and like what point have we taught kids that failure is bad? I mean, failing a test, that's not bad. Failing 2 tests, okay. Failing 3 tests, now you're probably going to fail my class. That's bad. But like I preach all the time to them. Let's use failure as a way to learn. You failed that quiz. Okay, well, guess what? Let's look at that from a positive angle. You know exactly what you need to study so that you don't fail the test. Or in running, hey, you just went out the first 800 or your 1600, you went out way too fast. But guess what? Now we know what is too fast. But again, if you're never pushing the limits, you're never testing yourself, like you never experience that failure. I mean, look, you're talking, again, my first year coaching, we were dead last in the region. Girls were second to last. Boys were dead last. And I had in there and look at kids that thought they were going to make it to state that didn't. And I'll tell you, that was the turning point. That failure was a big turning point in our program because I saw kids get serious because they didn't want to experience that again. They didn't want to miss out on qualifying for state again. So I had a group of boys and girls who bought into the training, bought into what we were doing, and we haven't missed the state meet since. And then you look at the girls winning state back in 2019. So, I mean, but again, it's like the patience failure part. Like if we weren't patient in the process, it took 7 years. And I always think back to like, I mean, I feel bad for some of these college coaches that are given 2-3 years to produce. You can't come in and change a culture in 2 to 3 years. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I'm a measly old, cross country coach, right? Like not many people care about cross country, but like, I think a lot of the principles are still the same, but it takes time and people fail and they give up. But I mean, I don't know. I just wonder at what point have we taught kids that failure is a bad thing? Like learn from it. Like, yeah. I think any successful person has failed, right? I think we can all speak to failures that we've had that have made us better and we're better for it. It sucked and it hurt when it happened, but in hindsight, we wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't be the people we are today if we hadn't gone through that and learned how to pick ourselves up and keep moving on. I talk to kids all the time. The real world's tough. You're going to fail. There's winners and there's losers. And I even said this to my AP kids today. There's winners and there's losers. And guess what? Not everybody can be a winner. It doesn't matter how much work you put in. You're going to fail at some point in life. But learn the lessons now. Learn the values of being consistent now so that when you go in your job or with your family, and I think the consistent to great mentality applies, family, your faith, like your walk. I mean, I've listened to your guys' podcast and know like God's not like a taboo thing to mention on here, but like your walk with God, like you ain't, or your relationship with someone, like that relationship will not develop without consistency. You just like your significant others, Macen just got engaged, congratulations. But like, you don't just say, hey, on Sunday and then never talk to them again. and expect that relationship to grow. So, I mean, I think that consistent thing, it feeds into so many, and that's what I try to teach the kids. Guys, this is going to help you in so many aspects of your life that you don't even realize right now.
Yeah. I think, go ahead, Mitch.
I was just going to say, Dansby says it all the time about, baseball being a failure sport. I mean, if Dansby fails 7 out of 10 times,
Hall of Fame.
boy might be in the Hall of Fame. Like, and get some racks.
Yeah, you get paid. But like I said, this could be a whole nother conversation, but since you brought it up, like the whole failure piece is so interesting. So at what point did we teach our kids that failing was a bad thing? I say, since when did we learn that the cardinal sin in hitting was like striking out looking, because I think the answer lies in the fact that we are scared / embarrassed of what other people are going to think if we fail. It's not always the selfish, like about ourselves. What are we going to think of ourselves? It's about what is my classmate going to think when they ask me what I got on this test and I got a 62. And that's embarrassing. And we don't want to go through that because we don't want to feel that shame. But the way that I flipped it now was, who cares? Like, literally, who cares? If I swing at a pitch and fall down the box and my helmet flies off, at the end of the day, that's one pitch. And they still have 2 more to get, I still got 2 more.
Right.
Well, it's one pitch, but it's one pitch, but it's probably a meme forever.
Yeah, like, who cares?
I think it's already happened, bro.
At the end of the day, like, my success isn't going to be defined about what other people are thinking anyways. And kids, they're so ingrained now to think that it's all about what other people think. And I'm here to tell people it literally matters what anybody else thinks. And I'm not saying like, oh, your parents, this and that. I'm saying your average run-of-the-mill Joe that's sitting right next to you, it does not matter what they think, because all that matters is your truth that you like to live in through the person that made you. Plain and simple.
Man, it's the famous quote when LeBron lost the finals on the Heat. Who did they lose to? The Mavericks.
Yeah.
Dirk got him one. And he's sitting there. He's in a gray suit. And they're asking him, what are you going to do now? Everybody said you failed. And he looks dead at the camera. And he says, what's funny is it doesn't matter. All these haters or whatnot. He goes, tomorrow they're going to wake up and they have to live the exact same life that they live today. And then he walked off. Because number one, as Dansby said earlier, he's the GOAT. I want to bring that back up for any of MJ people listening to this. But
hey, hit Macen up on Twitter. He'll have this conversation with you, bro.
Oh, I got stats for days because I'm tired of thinking LeBron can't score on hot garbage defense. Any old heads listening to this, just know he's
just tweet Macen. We'll take it to Twitter.
He's bigger, faster, stronger. That's all I got to say. That's the end of the debate there. But no, it's Coach, you raised such good points, and to kind of wrap it up here, you got to be consistent in what you're doing. It doesn't matter what you're trying to do. Like if you're trying to read every night before you go to bed, well, if you read 2 nights out of the 7, well, you're not being consistent. If you're trying to get more sleep, but you're going to bed at, like Mitchell and I, before we got on here, he was saying he had a Macen day. My guy was up at 6:30 trying to get an early lift in. That's my dog, but he's tired now. But
tired.
I was the same way this morning. I was exhausted. Well, that's because last night I went to bed at 11:45. I wasn't consistent.
Preach.
The night before that, I went to bed at 10, was asleep by 10 like a baby turtle. And when I woke up, I woke up before my alarm. Why? Because my body's used to getting that amount of sleep. So when I woke up, I was ready to go. I wasn't sluggish. I felt good. I could have probably not drinking a coffee and gone in the morning and gone. But
here's the one quote that I'm going to leave y'all with, though. And my sister actually told me this, and I wouldn't say like changed my life or world, but it's something that's always interesting to bring up. Is she would always say, if you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And that kind of like not blew me away a little bit, but it's like, if I'm saying yes to, let's just say this extra cookie I shouldn't be eating, which Y'all, I've been good down here. Like, I've been good.
You haven't had
I
any?
don't believe that for one.
I've
I
been
don't
good
believe
with the
that for one
sweets.
second.
I've been good with the
Nancy
sweets.
was down there a couple weeks ago.
I mean,
Mal's
I'm
been
not saying I
down
don't
there.
have a few slip-ups. I'm just saying I've been good. But if I'm saying yes to this, I'm ultimately saying no to something else, right? Like, or the easier example would be, if I'm saying yes to, this Tito's and water, I'm ultimately saying no to some water that's going to help actually hydrate me for tomorrow's hot game or whatever it may be, right? Like, or if I'm saying yes to this late night movie instead of going to sleep, then I'm saying no to sleep. And now all of a sudden you compile all these things on top of each other. And it's hard for me to be consistent the next day because I didn't even do the necessary steps to be able to be consistent. And yes, we have our slip-ups, and I understand moderation is key and all that. But I think at some point we got to understand that if I'm saying yes to, X, Y, and Z, I may be saying no to the things that are actually more important in my life. And the more we can line up with what's important and what our yeses are, then, like, that's how you really start going straight up. You know what I mean? Like, that's how you start climbing at a lot quicker rate.
I was going to say, it's that conversation with yourself of what you do deem it as the most important things, right?
Yep.
And then how do you achieve those things?
Absolutely. Well, Coach, we
Well, I
appreciate
think,
you
like-
coming on. Oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah, no, I was going to say, I think part of this is what Dansby was talking about earlier, but not to get too deep, but I think a big problem with the failure part of it is kids, kind of background. My dad, I grew up in church. My dad was a pastor. But the problem is with the kids they care too much about what other people think, but they're losing where their identity is really wrapped up in, right? We're supposed to find our identity in Christ and who he defines us as. And when you live your life from that perspective, it's freeing, and you can be more confident in what you're doing, and you're not worried about failure necessarily because you're not worried about what people think, because you're a son, you're a daughter of the King, and he says, he already said who you are, and so that's all that matters. And so then you go out and you're not worried, but where are kids getting that? Where are kids, where are they finding their identity? They're not finding it there. And so you look at the failure piece, and then they fail, and then the failure then leads them to not being consistent. And, it's kind of like a vicious, never ending cycle that we're always trying to grab the kids, putting them back on the path and kind of redirecting them. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Especially when you don't, and we talk about that of, finding who you are and what's your purpose, right? And all of us, our purpose is to glorify him and to spread his word. And then what we do stems from that directly only because he's put you in a position. God crafted Dansby to be a professional baseball player and to have the outlet he does. God crafted us to be teachers and coaches. God crafted Mitchell to be creative and to touch people in a positive light. He has a specific purpose for everybody. And that's when I go back to telling people, when I give my testimony or whatever, and they say, what was it like when you gave your life to Christ? And I always tell people, I'm free. There's no other worry. What do I have to be worried about? Because, and that's and I think we talk about this all the time, and I know you've heard it, and the people who listen to this every couple of weeks hear it. Mitchell is great about that. Mitchell's great on, hey, it is what it is. Let's look at a positive light and let's keep going. And that's how you have to look at it, because even if you fail at getting your PR, you don't PR you were able to run today. Yep. You're able to compete. You're able to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself.
Facts.
So
always keep going.
Always, just keep going and just keep pushing, because your book's already written. It's just your job to go in the avenues that you think he's pushing you in, and go in the way that is going to make, you available to spread his word the most, and his actions, which is through love and hope and all of that. So,
spoiler alert, God wins in the end. So sorry if you haven't read Revelation, but spoiler alert, God wins. So, hey, you got nothing to worry about, because God wins in the end.
Process.
So, go be you, go be who created you to be, and be confident in that.
Yes.
So
Once you're confident, then you'll be free. And if you're free, you're going to end up competing and performing better. That's all.
Amen.
So, but Coach, we appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you,
I
Coach.
appreciate it.
I knew you were going to be a good one from the jump, especially because you're a dedicated fan.
I was worried with the tech jacket on, but it's gonna be all right. We made it through.
Hey man, AC